Turn your Bibles to 2 Corinthians chapter 8. 2 Corinthians chapter 8. Continuing our discussion of the collection that's being taken up for the saints in Jerusalem. The Apostle Paul had written in 1 Corinthians to get the thing started, and 2 Corinthians about a year later telling them to finish the work so it can all be ready to go. And we were talking about last week some of the principles of giving in verses 8 through 15. And we left off with verse 15 where Paul was talking about, "He who gathered much had nothing left over, and he who gathered little had no lack." The reference there, he's quoting from Exodus 16. Let's go back and take a quick peek at that. Exodus 16, because it kind of confirms what we were saying last week about this, about the benevolent relief being temporary and just to get people back on their feet, and the meaning of this word equality here. And so in Exodus chapter 16 and verse 18, it says, "This is the thing which the Lord has commanded, let every man gather it according to each one's need. 1 omer for each person, according to the number of persons, let every man take for those who are in his tent. Then the children of Israel did so and gathered, some more and some less. Then when they measured it by omers, he who gathered much had nothing left over, and he who gathered little had no lack." So there's the quotation that the Apostle Paul made there. Every man had gathered according to each one's need. And so the idea was to meet the need. That's what the word equality is talking about. To get them back on their feet, to meet their needs. Not to give them an abundance, not to take them beyond, but just to get them back on their feet. And I wanted to bring that passage in from Exodus because he quoted that. But back in 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 16, then he talks about the messengers. In Bible times, they would pick a messenger from the congregation to carry their contribution to where it needed to go. And, in our day, we just write a check, put it in the envelope, and the post office delivers it. In their day, they didn't have a post office, so they would pick a trusted member of the congregation. And so he's writing about the messengers from the churches in Macedonia and informing the Corinthians about them, because when Titus came, he brought these messengers with him from the other churches. And so verse 16, he talks about Titus first. "But thanks be to God who puts the same earnest care for you into the heart of Titus. For he not only accepted the exhortation, but being more diligent, he went to you of his own accord." So one of the people that were coming to Corinth, or that was at Corinth, was Titus. And Titus was eager to get there and eager to help. He accepted the exhortation, that is Paul's exhortation. But not only that, but he was willing to do it on his own, of his own accord, because he'd already been there to Corinth. He'd seen how they were receptive to Paul the first time, the first letter. And so he's all excited about the church, and he's excited about the work that they're trying to do. A second guy, an unnamed brother, verses 18 through 21. "We have sent with him," with Titus, "the brothers whose praise is in the gospel throughout all the churches." So whoever this is, he's well known. He's not named for us. We have no idea really who he is. But apparently he's well known. And not only that, but he was chosen by the churches to travel with us with this gift. So he was one of the chosen messengers. Remember when Paul wrote the first time to the church at Corinth, he gave them the same instructions. He said, "Whoever you approve by your letters, I will send to bear your gift to Jerusalem." So this guy was chosen by the other churches, the churches of Macedonia. And so he chose to travel with us with this gift, which is administered by us to the glory of the Lord himself, and to show your ready mind, avoiding this, that anyone should blame us in this lavish gift which is administered by us, providing honorable things not only in the sight of the Lord, but in the sight of men. Now, a lot of scholars, when you look in the commentaries on this, they identify this brother as Luke. Can't prove that. There's no way to prove that, but it could be. It makes sense and it fits. Luke was a traveling companion of Paul. He was well known. He wrote a gospel. So this could be Luke, but we don't know that. But that's what a lot of commentaries identify this particular individual as Luke. But there's a principle here that I want you to get. The reason these messengers are chosen, they're supposed to be somebody trusted, and you can see this in verse 20. "Avoiding this, that anyone should blame us in this lavish gift." When you're handling money for someone else, you've got to really be on your toes. You want to be as honest as you can possibly be. And so these people are handling money for the churches. They're going to carry their contribution to Jerusalem. And so you want to pick somebody you can trust. And he says, we don't want anybody to blame us. We want to be able to provide honorable things, verse 21, not only in the sight of the Lord, but in the sight of men. And so when it comes to handling money, you got to have a trustworthy person. And so you think about that, how it would apply today with church treasurers and things of that nature. They're handling the money, the pooled resources of the group. You want to pick someone you can trust, you see, and we've got one right here. So you pick a guy you can trust, and he provides things honorable. That is, he keeps track of it. If there's any questions, he can answer your questions and things of that nature. And that's always wise to do. In order to avoid, because what happens is people complain and people gripe and people moan, and you got to be able to make sure you got your ducks in a row so you can back it up. Now, years ago, and this goes back even before I was there, but when I was at Hickory Grove over in Cumberland County, I heard the story. This went back way before I was there, but one of the guys used to carry the treasury in his hip pocket. He didn't put it in the bank. He carried it in his hip pocket. Now, that's not smart. Because all it takes is a little accusation. Well, he's taking money out of there, and how's he going to prove it? If he's just carrying the cash in his hip pocket, how's he going to prove what went in and what went out, you see? So that's just not smart. You got to do things wise and on the up and up. Records written down. Here's what went in, here's what went out, here's where it went, and that's the kind of thing he's talking about here. Okay, questions, comments?
There's two each time Paul, he makes mention somebody you choose.
Yeah.
He didn't say I'll recommend this guy.
Yes.
And like you said, he's making it so that there's multiple people involved, but it's somebody that the congregations respect and trust, and then that way everything they got more than one involved that can verify that this was what was taken up, this is what was delivered.
Yeah, exactly right.
Lanny, there was a guy that years ago when I was, I don't know, young, I guess, little, my mom always said that there was the people that count money,
Yeah.
they had 2 or whatever, and this one guy, he's a member of the church, he said, when he count money, he said it's hard not to have sticky fingers. And I thought, well, if he knew that that would bother him,
He shouldn't be doing that. If he finds that to be a tempting thing, he shouldn't.
And years later, Mom was saying, and I thought, well, why would he?
Yeah, why would he do that job?
With money, you need to stay away from.
Yeah, that's the last thing he needs to be doing. He's openly saying it, that it's hard not to have sticky fingers. Openly saying that he should have been removed from that. Yeah, that's a good point. Anything else? Okay, then there's a third brother here, the proven brother, verse 22. And we have sent with them, that's Titus and the other guy, who may be Luke, we don't know. We have sent with them our brother, whom we have often proved diligent in many things, but now much more diligent because of the great confidence which we have in you. So 3 messengers are there, Titus and 2 others, and they're the ones who have been going to the churches, and they've been chosen by the churches to deliver this money. And of course, Corinth is going to be doing the same thing. They're collecting their funds, and they're going to choose their messengers. And then so he just gives these last minute things, verse 23 and 24. If anyone inquires about Titus, what's he doing here? Why is he here? He is my partner and fellow worker concerning you. So Titus is not so much a messenger of the church as he is a messenger of the Apostle Paul. He's there checking things out and kind of keeping an eye on things while Paul is elsewhere. If our brethren are inquired about, the other guys, they are the messengers of the churches. See, that was their job, to deliver that fund. They are the messengers of the churches and the glory of Christ, because they're doing Christ's work. Therefore, show to them and before the churches the proof of your love and our boasting on your behalf. Treat them with respect for the work that they're doing is basically the idea. Now, remember the chapter verse division is placed there by men. Chapter 9 is continuing on in the same discussion about this collection. Now concerning the ministering to the saints. So he's going to make some more remarks here. And why these men were sent ahead. Concerning the ministry of the saints, it is superfluous for me to write to you. There's a big word. Anybody know what superfluous means?
Just like overflowing, unnecessary.
Yeah. Yeah, see, it's not necessary. I don't really need to say this. You know this, but I'm going to say it anyway. But I don't need to say it. It's beyond what's required. It's not necessary for me to write to you, for I know your willingness. Now he's talking to the Corinthians. I know your willingness, that is, your willingness to participate in this help of the church in Jerusalem, about which I boast of you to the Macedonians. And he'd mentioned that earlier in chapter 8, that he was bragging to the Macedonians about the church at Corinth and how eager they were to participate in this. Achaia was ready a year ago. Achaia, that's where Corinth is. So when he speaks of Achaia, he's talking about Corinth and maybe other churches in Achaia. I don't know for sure if there were other churches there. I can't recall off the top of my head. But certainly Corinth was in Achaia, the capital of Achaia. And so you were ready a year ago. And so there's that reference again, when this all got started about a year ago. And your zeal has stirred up the majority. Everybody sees what you're doing, and they're all excited too. So we're all excited to be involved in this great work. Yet I have sent the brethren. Now these brethren are the ones we just read about. Titus and the two other men who are unnamed. One of them possibly being Luke, but we can't prove that. But I have sent the brethren, lest our boasting of you should be in vain. I want to make sure that you do as you said you would do, okay? And that we haven't bragged and puffed needlessly here. In this respect, that as I said, you may be ready. We had said that all along. I want the funds collected and ready to go when I get there, okay? So I want you all to be ready. Lest if some Macedonians come, some of these guys from Macedonia, they come with me and find you unprepared. Now, how would they be unprepared?
Not having gathered.
Haven't got it all gathered up yet, that's right. Haven't got it ready. So lest if some Macedonians come and find you unprepared, we, not to mention you, should be ashamed of this confident boasting. So we've been bragging about you, don't let us down. That's basically the idea. We've been bragging about you and your eagerness to be involved in this and your generosity, so don't let us down. So there's a little gentle pressure there to make sure they get this done. Therefore, I thought it necessary to exhort the brethren to go to you ahead of time and prepare your generous gift beforehand, which you had previously promised, that it may be ready as a matter of generosity and not as a grudging obligation. I want you to do this because you want to, not because you have to. But they're coming to encourage you to finish this all up. Now, preparing your gift is basically the idea of getting this all finished before I get there. All right, before moving to the next section, questions, comments? Basically, this is all talking about those messengers from chapter 8 right up to this point here, chapter 9, verse 5. Okay. In 6 and 7, let me turn my notes over here. In 6 and 7, we have some more principles of giving. We looked at some of those principles in chapter 8. You remember in 8, verses 8 through 15, you had the principle of your peers, verse 8, the diligence of others. You had your prince, verse 9, give like Jesus gave. Verse 10, give like you promised, 10 and 11. Verse 12, give according to your potential. And verse 13, give like you're going to be paid back, because someday you will be. And so some more principles in verses 6 and 7. But this I say, he who sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and he who sows bountifully will also reap bountifully. Let each one give as he purposes in his heart, not grudgingly or of necessity, for God loves a cheerful giver. So there's about 4 principles here. The first one, in verse 6, is to give bountifully. What does bountifully mean?
Abundant.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah, a lot, as much as you can. And notice he uses the metaphor of sowing and reaping. And this can tie in with our Wednesday night study about interpretation. Figures of speech. This is a figure of speech. Sowing and reaping is a figure of speech that's rooted in farming. But notice that in the Bible it's applied in a whole bunch of different ways. For example, in Galatians, he who sows to the flesh will of the flesh reap corruption. He who sows to the Spirit will of the Spirit reap. So sowing and reaping, same metaphor, but a totally different context. There he's talking about the way you live your life. Here, sowing and reaping, what are we sowing and what are we reaping?
The good giving.
Yeah, we're sowing the money into the treasury. That's what we're sowing. And we're reaping the benefits of that later down the road. So what they're putting into the treasury is seen as a seed, as a sowing, and you're going to reap later. And he'll talk about what we reap a little bit later on down in the text here. But he says you don't want to be sparing in this. You want to be bountiful. So a principle of giving is not to see how little you can give and squeak by. That's not the principle. The principle is see how much you can give. Do what you can here is the idea. And then verse 7, let each one give as he purposes in his heart. There's another principle. What does it mean to purpose?
Think about it, plan on it.
Yeah, it's planning, it's purposing. You give some thought. And as I've said, I think I've said it here. I know I've said it in a lot of other places, but you kind of ask yourself some questions. What are we trying to do here at Walton Chapel? What is our goals? What are we trying to accomplish? That's question number one. Question two then is, once I got that's clarified, how much can I help? That's question two. And there's how you purpose. What are we trying to get done here as a church? And how much can I help? That's what this is all about. And remember, this is all free will. You do this, you choose, you decide. But he's given you guidelines here, some guiding principles here. And it's not about being stingy, it's about being generous. And so you purpose, you give some thought to it. And sometimes people don't give much thought to it. They wait till the last minute and then they just kind of search around in their purse or in their wallet and they pull out the smallest thing they can find and slap it in the treasury. And they've never even thought about it until Sunday morning and somebody's standing here saying it's time to give. They haven't even thought about it. The Bible's telling us to think about it. Think about it. So, when you think, and I don't know if you do this, but I do this, and I think it's a good thing. It's not necessarily a have-to thing, but it's a good thing people do. Budget your money. That's just smart thinking. Sit down once a year or once a month or however long. Budget your money. And I got a house payment, I got a car payment, and I got groceries, and then you know where every dollar goes. And one of the things that needs to be at the top of that list is, how much can I give to the Lord? Why do I say that should be at the top of the list? God comes first. That's right. And remember what Paul said in the first letter. He didn't say, let each one of you lay by in store after he has prospered. That's not what he said. He said, each one of you lay by in store as he has prospered. So it's geared to your prosperity. The more you make, the more you should give, is the idea. So these are the principles. So you do it purposefully. You give it some thought.
Discussion I want to bring up.
Okay.
This guy, let's say that, I'll just tell you who he is, the Cruz brother that's in the Philippines. Now, when he had an accident, some of us sent him some money to help him get over his accident. He needed a motorcycle to spread the gospel. Some of us sent him some money to buy a motorcycle.
Yeah.
But now he's wanting money for his son to go to college. And in this verse down here where your heart, I can't find it in my heart to send him money for that purpose.
Yeah.
And it's bothering me because I don't have the feeling that I want to send him that money.
Yeah. Well, that's not a benevolent need. That's the way I would see it.
That's what me and John have discussed it. I don't get the ordained.
Now, if you want to, out of the graciousness of your heart, if you have lots and lots of money at your disposal and you want to, out of the graciousness of your heart, help somebody, that's fine. But that's not really a benevolent need, and it's certainly not something that the church itself should be involved in.
In their kids' college, they worked and done
Right.
what they wanted to do. So I don't feel comfortable sending him any, but I feel a little bit guilty for not.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
I understand, but if it were me, I wouldn't see it as a need as
yeah,
much as a
I don't
want.
see the need.
Yeah. It's the distinction between needs and wants. And again, if you want to help, that's fine, but it's not really a need. It's not a benevolent need, yes.
I tried to explain to them the difference in a want and a need
Yeah.
that hasn't taken root.
Yeah.
But I'm like Gene.
It hasn't registered in their mind.
I'm kind of like Gene. I feel kind of guilty that I don't do it,
Yeah.
but I don't feel responsible to send somebody else's kid to
Well,
college.
yeah, and where does it end? You're going to send my kids to school? You're going to send everybody's kids to school? Where does the point of a benevolent thing is to help somebody get back on their feet, not to just fund their college education.
He sent him money to help him spread the gospel, you know. He needed a motorcycle to go around the different churches. That was fine.
Yeah.
I wanted to do that.
Yeah.
But this other, I'm just having problems saying.
I understand that, yeah. I'm right with you on it, I agree. I think you're right. I would question that, whether it was a real need. And again, I just want to make sure I cover all the bases. I don't think it'd be wrong if somebody has a whole bunch of money and they want to do it, out of the goodness of their heart, fine. But I don't see it as a need at all.
Church treasury anyway.
But certainly not out of church treasury, definitely not.
Oh, no, we're not talking about church. That ain't even in the question.
Yeah, that's definitely a no, yeah, yes.
That was my question. If we're supporting somebody that would even think that we would send money for their son's college out of the church treasury, I don't think we need to be sending money to him, but if that ain't what he was asking, that's a different story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think he was asking for.
Yeah, that ain't what he's asking.
He was just asking for individual help.
If individuals could
Yeah,
help,
the
and,
motor-
and there's nothing wrong with individuals
Right.
want to help, and that's fine, you know, but it's
But
their
it's a-
judgment
it's
is
a-
what they
it's a
help or not help on that, you know.
The motorcycle was not come out of the church treasury. I'm not saying, I'm
I
not talking
understand.
anything about church treasury.
Yeah, no, I understand what
Nothing
you're
against
saying.
about
I got it.
church treasury.
Yeah,
I want to make sure everybody understands that ain't, none of that coming out of church treasury.
yeah,
It's
no, I get it.
It's out of our pocket.
But I'm right with you though on whether or not that's really something
You should do.
you should do. I mean, I can see why you wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to do that, you know.
What are y'all I'm somewhere in the dark, because evidently I missed something. So what are y'all talking about, a want and a need to give to the Lord?
No. It's a specific, it was a specific case of somebody who was wanting some help with paying for his kid's college education. And is that a want or is that a need? And I say that it's a want, it's not a need. Yeah. Is that clear?
Yeah, I thought
Yeah.
y'all ain't talking about giving to the Lord.
Oh, no. It just came up as connected to this a little bit, but don't misunderstand.
Some things that are judgment calls
Yeah.
as to what you will do or not do.
Yeah.
And each individual has to make a call on their own, for their own self. Just like here, he's talking about purposing what you give. That's, each family, each person, each has to make their judgment as, here's what I think I can help.
Yeah.
Here's what I think, even in matters that are,
Yes.
like this or scriptural, they still have to make a judgment as to how, and we as a church or we as other individuals can't make that judgment for them. I can't say, well, you gotta give $200 or you gotta give
Right.
$500. They have to make,
You make the call.
they have to make their judgment, but we need to make it out, like you said, with the right attitude of cheerful. What can I do?
Yeah, following these principles.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I've got a question. I remember Miss Winkler, brother and sister Winkler, and I remember her saying, "Well, we're not giving as much now because we are doing a lot of other things, helping people outside, that we're doing."
Yeah.
And I never did. I thought, well, should you not give as much to the Lord and do that? Or, I was kind of confused.
Yeah.
And you know what I'm saying? So like if you give a lot to people that's needed it, and you've given a lot to that, would you cut down on what you give to the Lord?
I probably would not. That's not a decision I would make, but I would still put it as a judgment on their part. The Lord will judge it in the end, whether they did the right thing or not. Leave that to the Lord.
I mean, He knows what we're doing with all of
He
it.
knows what
so-
we're doing, and He knows whether they're doing the right thing. But it's not wrong to help somebody else, but I think you have to have certain priorities. And for example, talk about your budget. One of my top priorities when I think about that would be the church. That comes right up there. Yes.
Your question number one would help answer that. If, what does the church do? What is our goal with the church? Because I think we've taught maybe 3 or 4 lessons. Like if the church is just stockpiling money, it's not right in itself either.
Yeah.
So if the church is getting an abundance and
Not doing anything with it.
then you might say, hey, I ain't giving as much, I need to help these. And then when the church says, hey, we're gonna start doing this with
Yeah.
this extra flow of money,
Well, I think you're onto a good principle there. In fact, I think that's another principle to factor in. When you look at the examples, even here and in the book of Acts, there were times because of a great need when you might dig a little deeper. Well, if that's true, and I think it is, it also stands to reason if there's not a great need, they're not using the money or whatever, and they haven't, then you could back off of that on the same principle. If not, why not? You know, what are we trying to do, and do we have enough to do it, and how much can I help? But if they're stockpiling in abundance, then they don't really need it. So I think using the same principle in reverse, that would apply that way. I don't think it's, as I say, I don't think it's a tax, 10% no matter what, or 15% no matter what. It's geared to what we're trying to do and how much I can help to get that done.
Now, some people might look at it, kind of like Joanne was saying, if they don't feel the congregation has that much extra need right now, that we're in good shape, I might be able to use and be helping for the Lord's cause individually another way.
And that's what I'm trying to say. I think you said it
and that's a judgment call.
Yeah.
You know, I might send to one of the brethren as an individual that's preaching and help him, and that's a judgment call as to how much, how I use it, how I give to the Lord. You know what I mean? Because we give to the Lord. You know, usually we always just think about it, how much money we put in, but we give to the Lord when we give our time, when we use, and when we do, you know, there's other ways that we need to be willing to give.
And that's a great thing too, to bring us back around to that reality, what you're talking about there. Everything you have and are belongs to God to start with.
Yep.
You're just divvying it up. You know, here's to my family, putting the roof over their head. Here's to the work of the Lord. Here's to take care of my children. And you're divvying it up. So it's all God's. And your time and your efforts, that's God's too. And you're divvying it up, you're being a steward of your resources and your talents and your abilities. And God will judge whether you did it the right way or not. Yes, sir.
I think everybody, you know, with their conscience, everybody with their right mind anyway, they're gonna know whether they're giving enough, all they can do or not. And if not, they're feeling guilty to themselves, even though nobody else will know it.
Yeah.
And then on that same note, it's none of my business who gives what. That might be all they've got, or I don't even look at.
Well, I think that's a good point too, because really we're not trying to dictate what somebody else does. We're just looking at the principles here, and they do what they think they can do, and then the Lord will judge it. That's in His hands, whether or not they did the right thing or not. Yes, sir.
You know, getting back to Gene, what he was talking about earlier with the guy, a lot of people get used, I mean, I'm sure all of us can look at it. Some people get used to asking for stuff and just keep on, and just trying to see, comes a point in time where you have to wing them. You know, no, this is it. You know, you can't just keep on handing out. Even, I mean, you can with your own money, and I understand what Gene was talking about. It is his own money, what he was talking about on that part. But
Even then, there comes a point
in time.
Enough's enough.
Say, you know.
And I think you're right. I think it kind of ties in a little bit to what he said here, we were talking about last week, you know, that there might be inequality. The whole point of this is not to be a never-ending drain on my budget. The point of this is to get you back on your feet. And if you're back on your feet, now you're on your own. You know? It doesn't mean that I've got you back to where you're a millionaire. It just I got you back to where you can kind of handle things now. I've got you back on your feet.
If we could all understand verse 7, we'd be all right.
Yeah. Sylvia.
Also, if you work for your own things, like mine had to work the whole time they went to college. If you work for your own things, you value it a whole lot more. I remember a girl that got a full scholarship to go to MTSU. She stayed 6 months and left.
Yeah.
Now, if that would have been my child, I would have been all over her because it was my money that was being spent.
Yeah.
And if it's someone else's money, you really don't care that much.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point too. That is true. Where did I leave off? Looking at the clock here. Where did I leave off? Verse 7, right? Yeah. Let each one give as he purposes. We talked about that. Not grudgingly, And then of necessity, those are two things. Not grudgingly. What does he mean to give grudgingly or not grudgingly?
You give it, but you don't want to.
Yeah. Well, if I have to, you know. And as I've said before, if that's your attitude, just keep it. As far as the Lord's concerned, He's not going to bless you for that. You may as well keep it. If you're just throwing it in there begrudgingly, the Lord's not going to recognize that as a service to Him. He's going to see it as just what it is, reluctantly given. And so if you're going to be that way, you may as well keep it for all the good it's going to do you spiritually. It's not going to do you a bit of good.
Wasn't it Ananias and Sapphira, wasn't that the account in Acts?
Yeah.
And I'm thinking the right names, but that sold a position and gave a part, but they lied because they wanted to present it like they'd done it all.
Yeah.
And we know that one wasn't accepted because they both died.
They
right
both
there.
died, yeah. Then the second one, not grudgingly or of necessity. Well, grudgingly or of necessity, same thing. The last part, God loves a cheerful giver. Cheerful. That stands in contrast to the grudgingly. So to give cheerfully means that you're glad to do it, happy to do it, okay? And so rather than begrudge it or do it just because you have to, that's necessity, then do it cheerfully because you want to do it. And by the way, that's really what the word give is suggesting to us in the first place. As I said, it's not a fee, it's not a tax, it's a gift. The church runs on gifts, on free will gifts of its members. And so this is all back behind all this principle. It's not something that you should feel that you must do, but something that you want to do. And our service to God, you can expand that to all of our service to God. Our service to God should be what we want to do. I want to be baptized. I want to attend the services. I want to give as much as I can. I want to teach the gospel. It should not be about having to. It should be about wanting to. Okay. Yes?
Just popped in my mind. You know, when the multitude was following Jesus, he knew they was just there to eat.
Yeah.
And
He quit.
He knew that he had to cut them off.
Yeah, he cut them off. And then they went back. A lot of them went back and didn't follow him anymore.
Right.
Because they were only there for that.
That's been an example. We have to.
Yeah, there's a good principle there. Sometimes, I think you're right, sometimes you do have to kind of put your foot down, so to speak, and just say, okay, enough's enough, fella. I don't mind helping you, but this is getting a little out of hand here. All right. Now, starting in verse 8, he's going to talk a little bit about the blessing. You know, if you sow bountifully, you'll reap bountifully. And he's going to kind of expand on that a little bit, and we're not going to have time to get into it, but I am going to read it. And we'll talk about it next week. God is able to make all grace abound toward you, that you always, having a sufficiency in all things, may have an abundance for every good work. As it is written, He has dispersed abroad, He's given to the poor, His righteousness endures forever. Now may He who supplies seed to the sower and bread for food supply and multiply the seed you have sown. So there's a principle, and we'll dig into this more next week, but the idea is you're going to get back more than you give. And listen to me, you cannot outgive the Lord. I don't care how much you put into that treasury, you're going to get it back tenfold, 100-fold. Maybe not in dollars and cents, but you're going to get it back. And we'll talk about that next week. That's kind of what he's getting at here. But I got to hush because of the time.